We will cover the early development of civilization and world culture in this presentation. Specifically, we will cover the areas you see here. If you have any questions, please contact your instructor. The population of the world has grown steadily through the ages. This rapid population growth has made it difficult for the Earth to provide for everyone. Human history stretches back about 8,000 years to around 6,000 BCE. You're going to see the term BCE throughout this presentation and in other areas of this unit. BCE stands for Before Common Era. The earliest recorded date in history is in 4500 BCE. Most historians credit the beginnings of civilization with the beginnings of writing in 3500 BCE. In prehistoric times, before writing, people invented the wheel, used calendars, played instruments, worked with copper, created pottery, and traded along the Mediterranean Sea. The first civilization was in Mesopotamia, or the land between two rivers. It is also known as the Fertile Crescent. It is the region between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers in what is now present-day Iraq. Sumerians lived there from 4000 BCE to 2000 BCE and were probably the first to invent writing called cuneiform. Babylonians lived in Mesopotamia from 2000 BCE to 1550 BCE, where they built the most elaborate hanging gardens. King Hammurabi wrote the Code of Hammurabi, establishing the first set of laws. The Assyrians took over Mesopotamia around 1000 BCE to 600 BCE. They were followed by the rule of the New Babylonians under King Nebuchadnezzar from 600 BCE to 500 BCE. Mesopotamia ceased to exist after the Persians invaded in the 5th century BCE. The first humans to date were discovered in Africa and are believed to have lived more than 250,000 years ago. Early humans formed nomadic tribes about 30,000 years ago. The first towns were built along the Nile River around 4500 BCE. By 3000 BCE, a sophisticated society began to develop in Egypt. They wrote using hieroglyphics and used a calendar similar to the one we still use today. Egyptian history is typically divided into 7 periods. The Old Kingdom, which occurred from 2685 to 2180 BCE, is most notable because this is the time period when pharaohs tried to portray themselves as gods. During the 4th dynasty, which is 2600 to 2500 BCE, the pyramids of Giza were built. The Second Intermediate Period, which was from 1785 to 1560 BCE, the Egyptians mastered horse-drawn chariots. After this, the New Kingdom, from 1560 to 1085 BCE, Egypt invades Palestine and enslaves the Jews. King Tutankhamun also rules during this time period. The last period is the first millennium. This is when Egypt is controlled by Alexander the Great. By 2150 BCE, weak pharaohs and famine began to destroy Egypt. By 2050 to 1650 BCE, Egypt unifies during the Middle Kingdom. In 1650 BCE, foreign armies invade Egypt, and in 1550 to 1100 BCE, Egyptians overthrow the foreign army and the new kingdom begins. Egypt once again became powerful with lands that stretched along the Nile all the way to the Mediterranean Sea, but it was short-lived because by 30 BCE, Egypt was acquired by the Roman Empire. Other important things to keep in mind when discussing civilization during this time period is that the Nile River itself was 3,500 miles long, and it had several civilizations living alongside it. There are 6 cataracts, and Kush was located south of the first one. The Kingdom of Kush is a term the Egyptians gave the civilization, but it is now known as Nubia and has been for about 1,500 years. It is the region presently known as the Sudan. The Kingdom of Kush was around for 5,000 years and was the first African kingdom dating back to 4800 BCE. Egypt and Kush regularly fought, and Egypt was usually the victor. In 730 BCE, Cush finally defeated Egypt and placed a Nubian on the throne as pharaoh. Nubians ruled Egypt until the Assyrians pushed them out in 661 BCE, and remember, by 30 BCE, Rome conquers Egypt. Greece has always been associated with its islands. In 2600 to 1250 BCE, islands of Crete were inhabited by Minoans. The city of Troy was also being built during this time. In 2000 BCE, Mycenaeans inhabited the mainland. The Trojan War occurred during the Greek Dark Ages, which was between 1200 to 750 BCE, and was described in Homer's Iliad. In 1000 BCE, the city of Athens is founded. In 750 BCE, the city of Sparta is founded. In 527 BCE, Draco establishes democracy in Athens. In Sparta, all males become soldiers at age 7. In 500 BCE, the classical age of Greece begins when Athens defeats Persia at Marathon, and things declined with the Peloponnesian War that occurred between 430 and 404 BCE between Athens and Sparta. Great literature flourished, as did philosophy. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle taught in Greece, and Aristotle was even Alexander the Great's teacher. Aeschylus wrote Oresteia, Theology. Sophocles wrote Oedipus Rex. Other famous writers of this time were Aristophanes, Euripides, Herodotus, and Thucydides. This age begins with the death of Alexander the Great. He lived between 356 to 323 BCE. He was only 33 years old when he died. Alexander conquered much of Europe and Asia, spreading Greek culture throughout the lands. During the Hellenistic period, mathematics and science flourished. Epicurus, Zeno, Euclid, Archimedes, Aristophanes made significant writings and discoveries. The Hellenistic period ended around 30 BCE when Rome conquered Greece. In 500 BCE, Rome was founded. 300 BCE, the Roman Senate was replaced by a plebeian assembly. By 300 BCE, Rome rules all of Italy. In 150 BCE, Rome defeats Carthage in North Africa during the Punic Wars and controlled both sides of the Mediterranean. The biggest battle at Carthage was won against the Carthaginian general, Hannibal. In 1st century, Julius Caesar and Pompey ruled Rome, and Spartacus led a rebellion of slaves. In 44 BCE, Julius Caesar was assassinated during the Ides of March in a conspiracy led by his closest friend Brutus and Cassius. By 38 BCE, Octavius defeats Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium. Octavius was crowned God Emperor, and 200 years of peace followed, called the Pax Romana, the longest period of peace known in history. The birth of the empire coincided with the birth of the Common Era, also known as CE. The 1st century, Emperor Nero commits suicide. Romans destroyed a Jewish temple, devastated. The Zealots committed suicide. Codes of law were established. Ptolemy and Pliny the Elder made some significant scientific discoveries, and the Colosseum was constructed. After the death of Marcus Aurelius, the empire declined. 200 CE, civil wars broke out, and the Persians and Goths invaded. Constantine tried to stop the fall of the empire, but he couldn't. The Visigoths looted Rome around 400 CE. In 2500 BCE, Hinduism emerges in India. It embraces a caste system. Most Hindus worship the gods Vishnu, Shiva, and the goddess Shakti. Karma is the most important to Hindus in that the behaviors you have, good or bad, will determine your fate. In 1300 BCE, Judaism is developed by Hebrew tribes located around Israel. 1000 to 150 BCE, different authors wrote a series of religious texts we now call the Old Testament of the Bible. The Old Testament describes a single and just God. Elements of Judaism can be found in both Islam and Christianity. Hebrews trace their ancestry back to Abraham and his grandson Jacob, whose 12 sons founded the 12 tribes of Israel. In 1000 BCE, David is believed to have united the tribes into a single religion. In 400 CE, the Talmud is the more modern book of Jewish law and tradition. In 525 BCE, Buddhism is founded in India, founded by Siddhartha Gautama, who lived between 560 to 480 BCE. The Triptaka contains Buddhist teachings. It is said that Buddha obtained enlightenment through meditation. Buddhists believe that life is meaningless without reality. Historians generally believe that Jesus was born around 5 BCE. A small following of Jews believed that he was the Messiah. This belief developed into Christianity. Christianity was generally tolerated in Rome, but Christians were sometimes persecuted. Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity around 300 CE. By the mid-300s, Christianity was declared the religion of Rome. During the Byzantine era, after the Visigoths